All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to be respectful of your guys' time today, so thank you for joining. My name is Kevin Dunn, and I'm the Director of Product Strategy here at QA Symphony. I'm really excited to talk to you guys today for a bit about our new product that we've just recently launched called qMap, which is a really innovative new visualization offering that we have in our platform. So we're going to talk a little bit about qMap today, sort of why we released the product, something we've had in development for a couple of years now. So we're going to talk about why we built out qMap, what we're hoping to solve in terms of a market problem with qMap, and then we'll get into actually how qMap works, how you can get qMap, how you can get going with qMap, get it set up, and ultimately start improving your teams using qMap. So I'm going to go ahead here and get started with the presentation. We will record this, so if you guys need to hop off at some point early, we will have a recording we'll send out later, and you can share with other team members as well. I always tend to get a lot of questions about that, so we will have that distributed after the presentation, and we also will reserve about 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for question and answers. So I don't expect to use the full hour today. I'll probably be about a half an hour of content and then 15 minutes at the end for Q&A, and hope to get all your guys' questions answered. So just moving on to our agenda here. First, I'm going to explain a little bit about qMap. qMap is really a new offering in the space. We feel that there's nothing like this out there on the market today that's trying to attack the problem around the reporting and metrics and understanding quality and application. So we went out and really aggressively went after solving that problem with what we think is a unique offering that we have that is patented. So we're going to discuss a little bit about qMap and really what it is, and then we're going to dive into how to get started with qMap. So there is some work to get your initial map set up. It's not much to get your initial map of your application created, but there is a process around that. So we'll talk about how to get the pieces in place and get going with building your first qMap of the first application that you want to map and visualize with this qMap program. And then after that, we'll really talk about how to become a power user within qMap, how to get better at using it and leverage the features that we have in qMap to really drive collaboration and improvement within your organization. So we'll be sure to touch on that, and we've got some demonstrations of the tool that we'll use to help you guys understand how to do that. And then finally, we'll wrap up with Q&A. Like I mentioned, we'll have about 15 minutes for that. I'll also let you guys know how you can get your hands on qMap. Assuming that you're new to QA Symphony, we do have a trial, which I will discuss how to get that. And if you're an existing customer of qMap, you're likely already known about this coming for a while, and if not, we can definitely let you know how to get in touch with your existing customer success reps so that you can talk about getting a package which would include qMap. So let's really start here with the basics of what qMap is. And again, if you have questions along the way, we'll address them at the end, but feel free to use that question section on the side there to let me know any questions you might have, and then we'll reserve answering those for the end of the presentation. So let's just start with what our goal was. Here at QA Symphony, we saw that there was really a need for a better reporting tool for really the leadership and the executive level in testing and development teams to have better and more actionable insights around software quality. So we saw a lot of teams that would struggle and spend a lot of time and a lot of effort in developing really large Excel spreadsheets, reports that they would put together, through tools or manually to try to get some sort of insights about their application. But still, even if they would spend hours a day trying to cobble together these spreadsheets and get them out to executives still wouldn't really have a good sense of how much risk was left in the application if it were to go live at any given point, and didn't really have much confidence in the fact that things had been adequately tested. And we saw that there's really a shift, away from a lot of teams that previously used to focus on 100% quote-unquote coverage or completion of a test plan and 100% pass rates to, in a more agile world, people were starting to be okay with, things going untested or things not passing and going into production if they were not risky areas of the application. And on the flip side, we saw that people weren't okay to just say that something passed if it was a very critical part of the application, like checkout, for example. People would want to know that it had been touched many different times by different testers on different types of configurations and across the various different environments they might have. So our goal was to really deliver a tool that would solve this need and speak to the leaders as well as really the practitioners that are on the team and help them to better understand what the current health and quality of their application was at any given point in time. So as I mentioned, traditional reporting has a lot of challenges to it. It's static, it's not really living and breathing. So in our sort of agile world where we're having a stand-up and we want to go in during that stand-up and see right at that point in time what quality looks like, what testing progress and coverage looks like, it's really pretty impossible for us to get that view because most of it is tracked manually still. There are a lot of different disparate sources of information that have to get put together to create that one single view, and we can't really afford to take resources that are currently being used to test something in a sprint and devote them to putting a report together just so that we can have a stand-up. A lot of times the metrics are inconsistent, and a lot of that goes back to the fact that they're manually tracked. So testers will forget to go in and update the status of certain tests. If one test fails and blocks a number of other tests, we will forget to update those tests to blocked, for example, and then we'll have inconsistencies where we think there are things that are still left to be executed that are able to be executed, but they really might not be. And there are plenty of other scenarios where things like that can happen, and we really don't have consistent data that we can look at that's truly up to date. And that really ties back to it not being real time as well. And data is really not getting fed in there as the tester is doing the testing. A lot of times it's at the end of the day, a tester will go back into their spreadsheet or their test case management system and make updates to the statuses of those different test runs or test cases that they have, but it's really not providing that information to the executives and to the team in real time. So overall, our feeling was that the result is that there's just too much information, really. You're trying to sift through a mountain of information, trying to find, a few particular insights about the quality of your application, that ultimately we needed to introduce a solution that really solved these problems. So looking at what we came up with, it's pretty clear how we go about solving those problems. So qMap is really a brand new way of looking at results. It really takes you away from looking at these traditional test case level pass-fail metrics and boils it up to a level that everyone can understand, which is really taking the results of your testing, whether those are notes that you may have logged, defects that you found, time that you spent investigating particular screens, and we actually overlay that on a map of your site. So we create this mind map-like structure where each one of these nodes that you see is actually a screen within your application. So we can overlay the testing results directly on top of that screen, allowing you to have a better sense of which areas of your application really have been tested, since a lot of times we're just relying on the test case name or the traceability of a test case back to a requirement, but it's not always accurate and it's not always immediately impactful as to what that connection might be there. If we see a failed test, what does that really mean? And here, if we have a defect or a failed test, for example, that is linked back to an important screen, that's immediately apparent that that is, a checkout screen that is very important or very complex, for example, and one that we would want to be concerned about having a failure versus other screens where we might be okay with that. And it is dynamic and it's fed automatically. So we have a suite of tools called the Explorer that qMap relies upon to sort of feed this testing data into the map automatically. So the Explorer is really the vehicle that creates the map. The Explorer is recording what you're doing as you are doing your manual testing, and whether that's using our web Explorer, our desktop Explorer, or our mobile Explorer, you can really capture all the apps you may have in your ecosystem. And as you're testing and have those recorders enabled, they are feeding this information into our session manager where those recordings are being stored. And on top of that sits the qMap. So the qMap is really just taking the information that we capture about who was testing, what screen they were on, how long they were on that screen for, what bugs they found, what notes they may have taken, etc. qMap is really just a very high-level report and roll-up of what you're seeing in that session database. So it's a very unique offering, and the qMap relies on a lot of the innovations that we have made over the past couple of years in the Explorer and making that really ubiquitous tool that can work across all three of those web, desktop, and mobile platforms. So again, just reiterating why you would want to use qMap, right? I mean, obviously this is going to be a big shift in an organization to move from more traditional sort of test case management and pass-fail metric reporting to something like qMap. Well, one is that it's much more visual and much more appealing to someone like an executive who will understand your application but may not understand, you know, the library of test cases that you have against it. It distills it back up to the level of the application where an executive or someone that's not in the test case repository every day knows what a defect means versus, you know, not really knowing what a failed test case might mean just based off of the title of that test case. It's more actionable, so we think that it's because it's so visual and so collaborative that you can get people around a qMap. You could have these up on screens within your office, have people walking around looking at a qMap and really, you know, taking action based off of what they're seeing on that map. So if they see that an important area of the application is untouched and there's only one day left to release, that they might switch up the test plan and they may deprioritize some things that are not as critical and go straight away to working on that and making sure that they get adequate coverage in those areas. So we think that it will really drive Agile teams to take action and really, you know, fix problems that they're seeing in their organization. It's going to be a lot more accurate. Like we mentioned, it's not a manual input. You just turn the Explorer on and you get all of the benefits of the Explorer, the fact that it's capturing everything you're doing while you're testing, creating defect reports and manual test cases for you automatically. And the additional benefit you get on top of that now is that you get this qMap as well. No additional effort is needed to create a qMap. It's something that just is there based off the fact that you've used the Explorer to do that manual testing. qMap is connected, so we, you know, connect out to the popular ALMs like Jira, Rally, and version 1 for you to submit your defects directly there, just as you do today, leveraging the Explorer, and then pull back information about those tickets that you've logged into our system so that we can note which screens have defects associated with them and properly adjust the map and update the map based off that data. It's real-time, feeding all of those sessions in there and updating coverage instantaneously, so there's no work you need to do to update the map for stand-up or some other use of the reporting. And it's very easy to use. You know, it's a drag-and-drop interface. If you've ever used a mind map before, and even if you haven't, I think it'll be very easy for someone to get in and understand what qMap does. And you'll see a little bit more of that as we transition into some more of the product demonstrations a little bit later on. We had some great feedback about the tool, particularly Abdul over at Office Depot had some nice things to say about qMap, which we were obviously very excited to hear, saying that it's really a game changer for his team and the fact that it provides real insights into the health of applications and helps solve issues when they occur. So again, it kind of, you know, goes back to these companies that we work with that are, you know, working in more of this agile mindset and agile development life cycle. They see the need to quickly know what's going on and be able to react and respond to those changes. And our folks over at Office Depot seem to think that this tool is doing a lot to help them in achieving their goals around agile development and agile testing, which obviously help to drive the business. You can see here using it on a new state-of-the-art e-commerce platform that obviously is going to be very core to their business going forward. So I think I've done enough of a job of sort of explaining to you guys and selling to you guys on what our vision of qMap is. So from here, I'd really like to transition into those of you that are interested, how we can get started with qMap and how to get going with setting up the first map of your application. So the first step of creating a map for your application is really that you need to create a new qTest project. So qMap does rely on the Explorer and the Session Manager within qTest. So the first real step is to create a new project, basically saying that this is a project that you'll be working on. It can have a set start date and a set end date if you want it to, or it can be an open-ended project. You can invite people in to collaborate and basically have access to that project, the session recordings against that project, and ultimately the qMap that'll get created on top of those. And then each project in qTest can have multiple maps. So the hierarchy is that the highest level is a project, and then each project will have child applications that each have their own map. So for example, in our world, we could have a QA Symphony project, and then we could have a qMap for qTest, for qTest Explorer, and for qMap, since those would be kind of our three different products below that one project. Or we could create a separate qTest project, a separate qTest Explorer project, and a separate qMap project, and each one would just have one map for the application that's in that project. So it sort of depends on how you want to manage that hierarchy, but the first step is getting that squared away with building a new project in here to house the sessions that will be the foundation of the qMap. So then the next step is, like I mentioned, this is all getting fed off of recorders that are being used across the desktop, web, and mobile platforms. So we have a version of each of those inside of qTest. So once you create that project in qTest and go into that project, there'll be a download section where you can download any one of these three Explorers. So the desktop version works on the PC, so it is an exe file that will sit on your desktop, and it's the most powerful, I would say, version of the Explorer that we have. It will record any app that runs on Windows and any browser that runs on Windows. So it lets you select which of those applications will get recorded. So it's very powerful. And then for our folks that are doing strictly web development or might be using Macs, for example, and doing testing against web applications, we do have the plugins for Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. So those are browser plugins, so they're OS agnostic, so they'll work on Mac, Linux, etc. as a plugin directly in one of those web browsers. And then finally, we have a mobile version as well. The mobile version is for testing within native mobile apps. So you would take the agent that we have, which is sort of a snippet of code. You would instrument that in your application, so it would be an option every time you build your iOS or your Android application. You can include the code for the Explorer or not, which will either give you the capabilities of recording and sending sessions out to qTest, or you can easily choose not to include that code, and that will take those lines of code directly out of the application, so it would just be your pure application without the Explorer built into it. So once you have the Explorer installed and you sort of get your teams up and running on a process where you will be leveraging the Explorer as a recorder running in the background, then you are really able to start building out a session repository that your map will sit on top of. So this is, just showing you what the desktop Explorer looks like, what the interface looks like for those of you who have never used the Explorer before. It is a very small, lightweight recorder that really hides away as you are doing your testing, but you're able to pull it up at any point and stop a recording as well to get to a screen like this. And you'll see that, we give you a lot of annotation capabilities. You can go out to any particular screen and add your notes and your insights about that screen directly on the screenshot. But beyond just capturing screenshots automatically as you test, you see that we capture, if you can see, guys can see that, some step information here about what you're typing in particular boxes or what buttons you're pressing. as well as the time that you're doing that, the name of the screen that you're on. And there's a lot of rich data back here in this environment tab about what operating system you're on, how much RAM, resolution, etc. That's not only important in communicating the defects out to, say, the developer or whoever is assigned to fixing your defect, but it's also going to be important as we start looking at the qMap and future iterations of the qMap. Likely on our roadmap, we'll have the capability to filter coverage that you see on the qMap based off of different browsers, different operating systems, for example, so you can look at different slices of the map based off of environment data that's getting captured by the Explorer. And then after you've created that sort of library of tests, you'll see that there is a visual map that's created. So this is the qMap that we alluded to earlier. You'll see a video of this in action a little bit later on. But you'll see that we've got, certain screens here. These screens in orange are new screens that were just recorded by the Explorer and now are showing up for the first time. We've got different counts here of defects that have been logged, ability to filter on different defects by status, type, priority, etc. A lot of different ways to manipulate the map and look at, coverage by different testers, coverage during different sprints or time periods. So it's very flexible, and we have different map views for looking at how many times the page has been touched. So this is showing darker green where the page has been touched more times and lighter green where it is not. But then there's also an element where you can look at how much time has been spent on the screen, how complex the screen is, etc. So we'll get into really the power usage of the qMap and get into that in a little bit more depth in a minute. But first I wanted to talk about the process of building a map out, a qMap out of your application for the first time. So in building out a qMap, it's basically an iterative process. So somebody would likely go into the application first before setting the testers loose and build out the general layout of the application. So first you go in and go to sort of your L1 screens, which would be your level 1 screens. For us, on our QA Symphony website, I'll show you a video here in a moment about how we build out a map of our site, but we would go into the QA Symphony homepage and, for example, go to our About Us page, our Contact Us page, our Solutions page, all of those pages that you can access off the homepage, and record each one of those, capture them with the Explorer, and then we would stop there, go over to the map, make sure those are arranged properly. They should be in a pretty good order, but in case any are not in the order you'd like them to, you can rearrange them. And then you would go to one of those L1 screens, say, for example, our Contact Us page, and then you would continue the process and do all of the level 2 screens that hang off of that Contact Us page. So there might be an Email Us page, there might be a Directions page, and so those would all be the L2 screens, and then you'd go back and rearrange those, make sure those all look right. So you basically build it out in levels as you dive down into the application. And there's an ongoing process where you sort of monitor the map as new screens are added. You might have seen on the previous screenshot that there were screens that were like a shade of green, and then there's screens that are a shade of orange. The orange ones are the new screens that have been newly introduced. Tester just recorded them for the first time, and the Explorer and qMap have never seen those before. In that case, you'll have to make sure those showed up in the right place. If not, you may need to rearrange those. And again, qMap is sort of living and breathing artifact as new screens are uncovered, whether those are new screens that just got introduced by the developer or screens that had never been recorded before. Those are going to show up on the qMap, and they'll need to be arranged properly there. So the next slide we have here has got the live demo of us building out the qMap. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video and kind of walk you through the process I was just mentioning of building out a qMap for our QA Symphony website here. Oh, and I knew this might happen, so I pulled these up in the background. Let me escape out of here and go over to the browser and pull that up here. So I'll play it in this window here. So here you can see that we are going into qTest and downloading our different versions of the Explorer. So we've got the desktop version, web version, mobile version. You would download any of those ones that you want to use. So here we're going to use the web one since we're just testing against a website here. And so we're going to create a new session in our qMap project where we are going to map out this particular website, qasymphony.com. So this domain, qasymphony.com, will have its own map. So the point is to go in here and, like I had mentioned earlier, record just the highest level screens on our site. So you see it across the top here, we have all the screens that are accessible from our home page. So we're going to go in and capture each one of those. And as we're capturing them, if we want to add any notes or any text, kind of collaborate on the screen, capture anything that we're seeing there, we're able to do that. And that will all get saved in the screenshots that will be visible both in the qTest Explorer session as well as in the qMap session there. So we're going to continue on testing. We're going to go to each one of these sort of level 1 screens and make sure that they're captured by the Explorer. And you see that there's an icon back there that is up in the toolbar to let us know that it's currently capturing everything that we're doing. That's that little camera icon that you can see flashing up on the browser there. Here we're just going to show you a little bit more of what the Explorer captures. If you were doing testing, if you're going in and building the map, you might not be really entering in data like this. But just to show you, if you're doing some real testing with the Explorer up there, it will capture the steps that you performed, where you clicked on the screen, for example, and what you typed in. Each of those boxes will get captured by the Explorer and saved into the session. So we're just taking some notes here as we're going along and building out level 1 of this application. So at this point, we're done. We've captured all of the screens that can be accessible from the home page. And so we're going to go back into qTest. We're going to open up qMap, and you see that we have a map for the qasymphony.com domain. And so it's been built out pretty well here, but some of these screens we actually access. There are multiple ways of accessing them. You could get to them from the home page. You could get to them from other pages from kind of the header toolbar there. So we're rearranging these to all make them nodes off of the QA Symphony home page. So that is the sort of job that we're doing right here, making sure that structure is right. It's an easy drag and drop. And then we can drill into any of these screens if we want to. Look at the screenshot if we need to make sure that it's right. We can rename the screens if we want to give them a different name than what the Explorer captured. And you see we see some stats there about how long we spent on each individual screen, etc. So that is basically how we would build out the qMap, just to start there. So I'll hop back into the presentation here. So once we have the map built out, really the next step after that is to really talk about, okay, we built out the map. You could imagine that you take that process that you just performed and repeat that for each of the different levels of screens you have until eventually you've mapped the whole application. And you may have some new screens coming in every once in a while, but you're in sort of more of a maintenance and usage mode. So there's more tools and more functionality inside of the qMap that will allow you to really use the tool, slice the data in the tool in different ways that will allow an executive to get the insights they need, allow members of the team, developers, BAs, testers, et cetera, to see the data that they want to see. So that's where we really get into this sort of next set of features that we're going to demonstrate to you here. So you can see that really the different views of the map are based off of filters. So it's all based off of the filtering that goes on the left side panel here. So you can filter on who did the testing. So if you're like a line manager and you want to see what the testers on your team did, you can just select the testers on your team by clicking their different avatars, and you could save that as a filter that you bring up every time you look at the qMap for this particular application. You can drill into a screen. Like we said, you can see the actual screenshot. So if you want to see the evolution of, hey, what did the screen look like last time we tested it versus this time we tested it, you have that historical record, and that's all visible directly from the sort of drill down of the screen that you see here, and you can obviously rename that screen if it's not accurate as well. You can filter on time periods, so if we're a sprint team and we're trying to look at testing coverage that was done in this sprint, we can set that date frame up here, and so we're just looking at testing that was done during the course of this sprint. And then we also have the ability to sort of filter these bugs and notes. So we have different note types that you can take using the Explorer, like bugs, enhancements, notes, concerns, etc. And so we can take different types of notes and have those counts show up differently here by selecting on them right in this panel. And then down here we also have the ability to filter the defect counts based off of the status, type, priority, severity, etc. So maybe for an executive you would only show, severity 1 open defects, for example. Maybe that's a view that they care about seeing. You can create that filter, and then you would save that filter off as your executive's filter, and then they can easily view this map whenever they'd want to. You could also export the map into a number of different formats if you wanted to email it to them directly and not have them go directly into qMap here. And there's also the ability here to center the map on a particular screen. So if you have a map that has many hundreds or thousands of screens, you can search for that particular screen using the search bar up here. Then it will bring up and center the map on that screen that you're interested in. So if you're like a product owner and you're only concerned with your particular module of the application, which starts here and goes on from that point, you can search for that screen. It'll find that screen, center the map on that screen, and then you could just look at the detail in that area if that's what concerns you. Beyond the sort of high-level map view or the sort of view where you're seeing the entire application, you do also have this other drill-down view. So the drill-down view will allow you to basically look at details just for that specific screen in the application. So as we drill down into the screen, we can see a lot about it. Give it a new title. We can filter on details about it for certain time frames. For example, here, you can see how many defects have been found on the screen, how many notes have been found on the screen, what all those IDs of those defects are. And then there's a Twitter-like feed down here where you can see who tested the screen in what session. So you could jump out to the session manager and see the full test session they did there with the Explorer, and you can see what are the bugs that they added as a result of that testing. You can see the defect here, the name of it, and you could click that link. It would take you directly out to that defect there. We see we have other different concerns that have been logged here, and we have the screenshot, obviously, so if you hover over that, you can get a sense of what the screen looked like when this particular tester came across it. And so you take that one click and again take you right into the defect ticket. So this is showing us defect that was logged in QA Symphony's defect tracker, but we do have integrations out to version 1, Rally, and Jira, so you can really get between any one of those systems in qTest, log your defects directly in them, and then as they're found, they'll be logged directly in that system, and they'll have a linkage from qMap directly into there. So it's not like we sync the defects back and forth. It's really getting the real-time data of any of those tickets directly in the ALM where they've been logged. The other thing is that you saw that there's a link to get you back to qTest Session Editor. So if you see, hey, for example, Ryan found a defect during the course of this session, and I want to go and see what else he did during that session, right? What was he doing right before he found that defect? Did he log in with an admin user? Did he log in with a regular user? You can click that link, and it'll take you out to the session editor, which is similar to that view we showed of the Explorer earlier, where you see every single step they performed. You can walk through those steps, look at the screenshots, and see exactly what they did, what type of environment they were testing under, so you can get a better sense of the detailed testing they were doing, not just at that screen level at one point in time. So I have a feeling this is going to give me an error again. If so, I'll hop out to YouTube there. And yes, oh no, this one's going to work. All right, so here we're looking at a qMap that has been built out. So we've finally completed all that work of building out the map for the QA Symphony site. You see it looks very pretty here. We've got all of the pages on our site mapped here. And you see there are some different layouts. We have a left to right as well as a top to down to bottom view if you want to look at it that way. You can zoom in and out on the map here to make it easier to look at. You could also look at different levels of detail. So if you want to collapse it into only the first level of depth, you can do that. Defect counts will roll up. We've got the different time frames you can filter on here based off of sprint or release. You can filter on different testers here by clicking on their avatar to show their coverage on the map. We can obviously pop up the counts of the different note types we have, defects, bugs, concerns, etc. Filter based off of the different defect statuses or priorities, types, etc. Those are all configurable. We can create filters and save filters based off of that. We have the different map layers. So we have testing visits. We also have testing time spent on each screen. We can track the level of complexity on each screen, and we can also look at the maturity, so how recently that screen was introduced. For example, is it new, is it old, etc. And so you see as we filter on these, we'll get different defect counts there, and as we drill into a screen, it will show us, again, that Twitter-like feed that I mentioned earlier, the list of defects, and if we want to, we can take any of these links out to actually look at that defect out in our ALM. So here we're going to take that link, go out to our qTest defects. So this is one that we've logged in qTest, but it could be one in Jira Rally version 1. We see all the details that the Explorer put in here about the defect, the screenshot, the steps, etc. And then we have the linkage directly back into the map as well. So here you have the session, and so you can get directly back from the defect you raised into that detailed session where you actually tested and found that defect. We also have the web editor here, so if we need to go after the fact and add any new defects, we can add those after the fact. We can view videos that were recorded, and all of those defects raised after the fact will get added to the counts that you see within the map. Getting back into the map here, you'll see that we can easily drill into our homepage screen here, look at how much time was spent on that particular screen. That's all rolled up for us right there on that view. Then we have a toolbar here where we can, again, add zoom in, zoom out, add different levels of depth, recenter the map, refresh the map, export it into a PDF, JPEG, etc. So that's how to go ahead and use the qMap. So I think we've really covered at a high level how to get started with the qMap, as well as how to build out your first map and how to use the map going forward. Some of it will be up to you guys and your teams to really think about some more creative ways beyond just looking at application quality and readiness for release, that you could use the qMap as sort of the beginning of some collaborative discussions within your team. So if you guys are an existing QA Symphony customer and you have a qTest package or a qTest Explorer package already, you have been contacted by your customer success manager to talk about our options in terms of adding qMap to your package. And if not, feel free to reach out to them with any questions you have about that. And if you are new to QA Symphony, we do have a free trial of this available. It is included with our standard trial of qTest and qTest Explorer, and that is out on our website, qasymphony.com. It's a 14-day trial, and so you can sign up for the trial there, and we will activate a site for you that will have qMap enabled. And you can play around with the tool there. If you have any questions about how to properly build the map and get started, we have a lot of documentation included out on our support site, but we'd also be happy to support you in getting started and successfully launching this tool on your team. And we do have an upcoming webinar around Agile testing, so I see a lot of familiar faces on this webinar. So I do want to let you guys know that we have another webinar coming out here on August 18th with our partners C-Prime around the idea of achieving balanced agile testing. So that will certainly be a good one. We'll send you guys out the link to register for that, but if you wanted to go ahead and knock that out, we do have the link here. Is a little bit.ly link, and we will share that obviously with you guys directly as well. So that all being said, I'm going to hop over to the questions section here. I'm going to take a few seconds here to read through the questions we have and start answering those. So if you have any questions here, now is the time to send in those last questions and make sure I get to answering those. Okay, so I see a lot of questions so far about automation. So is automation supported with the qMap? That's a great question. So right now the qMap is based off of activity that is recorded by the Explorer. The Explorer is able to record certain automation frameworks, but it does struggle with some of the more popular ones like Selenium, for example. It's not always 100% in capturing the activity that's going on there. We do see qMap as in the future and in future releases of it supporting the results of automation testing. We would certainly love to get feedback from folks on how they think that would be achieved. We've looked at different ways of enhancing the Explorer potentially to capture those particular automation frameworks, or we could also open up an API, which we've already started building out on the qMap, where you could just feed the results directly from automation onto the screens where you want those results to be associated. So for those people that ask those questions, I may reach out to you and ask you to give me your thoughts about how you'd see automation getting layered onto the qMap. It is certainly something that we want to involve in the future. With this first release, we're really looking at trying to solve the problems around reporting on and aligning the progress of manual testing, but obviously we think there'd be a lot of value in injecting on top of that automated testing, as well as in the future things like load and performance testing. So to those of you that asked that question, I may reach out to you and discuss that with you further, because that is certainly something on our future roadmap that we want to look at. Somebody asked for a CEO or a CIO, for example, that may want to see the qMap, but they never use qTest. Is that possible? And the answer to that is yes. You can give them access in qTest just to see the particular qMap. So that's possible. You can share the link with them and give them the type of access where they can just go directly and see that map without having to go look at the other elements of qTest to access that. The other option that we would have as well would be based around the export. So we have the export into like a PDF file or an image file, as well as a mind map, raw mind map format, like for XMind, if you wanted to go edit the output of qMap and, for example, add some more screens onto the mind map through a tool like XMind. So those would be your two options. The one of sending the link and giving them access would obviously be more dynamic, but if you needed to email something directly that they just wanted to go look at any point in time, you could always export the map as well and send that their way. Okay, some questions as well about specific support for example, desktop Mac applications. That is something in our future roadmap we have looked at, but currently today we do not have a desktop version of the Explorer for Mac, but we do have the web plugin. So for anyone who's doing web testing on a Mac, we can capture everything that is going on inside of your particular web application, whether that's on Mac or on Linux, as long as you're using one of those three browsers, Chrome, Firefox, or Safari. that is sort of our entree into supporting things on Macintosh. But based off demand, in the future, there's always the option of being able to build out a desktop explorer for Macintosh, but for today it would just be supporting web applications directly through the browser, and that would provide some compatibility for those Macintosh testers. So there's a lot of questions about scalability in terms of how to scale the number of test suites and the number of test runs within the qMap. So we do have a lot of data points around that. Again, this is a new product, so we did have an extended beta where we worked with a number of clients, some of which were like Office Depot. We had some Fortune 1000 customers that worked with us on that beta as well. And so we got to a point of analyzing many thousands of user sessions in regards to creating a map. We've created maps that have many thousands of screens on them as well. So we really have not run into yet an issue with scalability. I think that we would be able to support even some of the largest applications in terms of the number of screens and number of testers touching those screens. So we do have the ability as well to really scale up. The qMap right now is launched exclusively in our cloud instance and will be coming out on-premise shortly in a few weeks. But for right now, our cloud instance provides a lot of scalability. It's dynamic and able to create more servers as more testers go in there and use the tool. And the nice thing is that within our cloud-hosted instance, all of the storage is included. So you won't pay anything extra to store the sessions or store the maps that would be created out there. Have one last question here about other products that have something similar to qMap. I really have not seen that yet. I think this is really the first entree into sort of mind maps for testing, where the mind map is actually created dynamically. So there are certainly tons of people, and people have been doing for a while testing using mind maps, and we do have a recorded webinar we did a few weeks ago around that topic with a guest speaker, which I'd certainly encourage you guys to go out on our YouTube channel and check out. But I really do think that in terms of having a tool that can record for you automatically and generate the mind map and update it for you, this is really the first tool of its type. So this is going to be a really neat tool that we're excited to be delivering out to the market, and we really look forward to getting your guys' feedback on it. So if you're a new customer to QA Symphony, please feel free to sign up for a trial. And if you are an existing customer, let's put you in touch with the customer success team if you'd like to try the tool out. We would be able to discuss that, especially for our on-demand customers. qMap is available currently, and for on-premise, it'll be coming out shortly. So we look forward to all your feedback. Please feel free to email me. You guys have my email from the webinar invite. You can let me know what you think about the tool. I'd be really happy to get your feedback and incorporate that as we move forward and enhance the tool. And I thank you guys a lot for your time and engagement today. A lot of good questions, and we look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of your guys' day.